There are times during the holiday season when I look around and do occasionally think that the original intended spirit of the season may well and truly be lost to humanity. I'm most definitely not a put the Christ into Christmas type, but I do believe that any holiday season that has an emphasis on putting aside differences, looking after those less fortunate, and coming together to not be absolute dillweeds to each other for even such a short period of time as a couple of weeks, seems like a universally good idea in my book. I'm not the first one to bleat about consumerism somewhat overtaking the element of the festive period, nor will I be the last. Which is why today's film, Sagan om Karl-Bertil Jonssons julafton, also known in the UK as Christopher's Christmas Mission, kinda caught me a bit off guard. The film stars Christopher, a young 14-year-old boy who lives as part of a moderately wealthy family on the richer side of town. Christopher has aspirations towards characters such as Robin Hood. He loves the idea that Robin steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Chris is an active working member of society, which is a bit weird for a 14-year-old, but alright. He has a night shift job, weirder still, 10 PM till 4 AM, working in the local post office sorting mail. In particular, he apparently likes throwing the fragile parcels. Good to see nothing's changed with the mail system in the last 45 years. Anyway, one of the things that bothers Chris is that he's constantly aware of the slums of the city. The narrator for the film makes it very clear that this movie takes place in a time where being poor wasn't something to be ashamed of. Whatever that means. But Chris is constantly of the mindset that these poor, unfortunate people deserve some joy at Christmas time. So he hatches a plan. Instead of organising the mail in the way he's been instructed to, Christopher instead decides to replicate his hero. He checks the labels of the parcels that come in, and anything with an occupation written on it, with the likes of director, captain, corporate manager or something similar, he sorts into his special sack. After doing this for a couple of days, he then puts his plan into motion. On Christmas Eve night, he heads out to the slums of his city to give out the most luxurious gifts to those that have almost nothing. On Christmas Day, he reveals what he's done to his father. He probably reads the Daily Mail because he brands his son immediately as a communist, refuses to speak to him, sends him to bed early, and on Boxing Day forces Christopher to go round to the houses of everyone he liberated from to apologise and explain why he did what he did. Will Christopher get the right rollicking from the powers that be, or will he be seen as the modern-day Robin Hood he aspires to? Well, I'm not going to spoil that for you. You'll have to go and watch it to find out. The film, clocking in at a rather short 25 minutes, absolutely blindsided me. The reason being is that it was distributed by a UK company called Abbey Home Video. Abbey, who've been distributing media in the UK for the best part of almost 40 years now, typically only release kids' films, such as the Raggy Dolls, Gran, and more recently the Mona the Vampire series. They're a kids' label. They don't tend to release much for adults both young and old. Christopher's Christmas Mission caught me off guard as it's a short film that's distinctly for young adults and upwards. But it's being marketed towards younger children, as if it was something they could appreciate and enjoy. They make a big deal that Bernard Cribbins is the narrator of this short in the English localisation. Cribbins, to those who are unfamiliar, is a British mainstay of the kids' TV and film genre, having done voice work on such perennial favourites as The Wombles and Mosh Chops. Them choosing to advertise heavily his involvement is basically Abbey Home Video blaring, "This film is something your 5-year-old will really, really like," despite the fact that the themes and language used throughout the film are way too mature for that kind of age group. Now, I'm not saying it's mature in the sense that there's adult themes or swearing, rather that the ideas that are posed in this short are way too complex for a child audience. It's essentially a very socialist Christmas, and while I would applaud any film company who want to instill the idea of a fair and even society to people of any age, the film doesn't really put across the message in a way that's child-friendly. Whether it's been lost in translation or whether British and European cultures differ greatly on this, I'm not sure. But the language used in the scripting is just a little too advanced for a child audience. There's a scene where Chris's dad literally calls him a communist for doing the plan he's done. How do you explain the concept of communism to a 5-year-old child when most people in their 60s don't entirely understand the idea of communism? There's a scene where Bernard Cribbins explains that Christopher is at an age where sexualised thoughts have not yet clouded his imagination. How the hell do you get through a conversation with little Timmy where you have to explain how puberty works? There's constant mentions of poverty and the causes of poverty, but it's done in such a way with the intention to open a dialogue. How do you open a dialogue about the state of the country where rich businessmen can earn over 100 times that of the poorest worker and still have tons left over, to someone who's still trying to learn basic maths? The foundations of socialism and basic communism are explored here. Also explored are the dangers of capitalism and right-wing rhetoric. But then, and mild spoilers here, at the very end of the film, Cribbins proudly proclaims that Christmas should only be about the celebration of the birth of the Lord Jesus Christ. This is never mentioned at any point in the rest of the 25 minutes of the film. It hit me like a frying pan up the side of the head. Literally it goes dum-de-dum-dum-dum, sharing is caring, dum-de-dum-dum-dum, be kind to those less fortunate, dum-de-dum-dum-dum, communism, dum-de-dum-dum-dum, Jesus is love and you should worship him. It's just such a strange and out-of-place thing. In short, this isn't a kids' film. This is probably aimed at teenagers and younger adults. Though I reckon adults would probably get a kick out of this too. For a more mature audience, I'd say this was brilliant, a genuinely heartfelt piece explaining the principles of love thy fellow man in a way that isn't overbearing and is mellow enough to really hook an audience in. It's great. And in the UK localisation, Bernard Cribbins does a fantastic job of making the story engaging and enjoyable. He really is, outside of the story itself, the best part of this. He's seriously ace. Marketing aside, however, I would also have to raise some serious issues with the animation style. Don't get me wrong, in terms of actual animation, it's nice and fluid, and it's clear to see a lot of time was put into making these characters move in as naturalistic a way as possible. However, the animation style itself is just a bit unsettling. All the characters kind of look a bit like rejected characters from Yellow Submarine, and the choice with some shots to use model sets as backdrops with which these animated characters interact is just a bit odd and kind of creates an unusual sense of depth to these 2D characters. To be honest, the whole style and flow just left me feeling deeply uncomfortable. I think this animation would make an excellent live-action feature. I mean, personally, I can seriously envision the late Richard Griffiths giving a rip-roaring performance as Christopher's father, though unfortunately the odds of this happening are pretty slim to none. The animation may not be to my choosing, but if you like what you see in this review, then I doubt you'll really have any problems with the film in general. The soundtrack's a total winner for me. It's all mellow and smooth jazz, and it has a real laid-back feel to it. It's got festive vibes, but it's not overbearing. It's the kind of thing that you could imagine maybe settling down in front of a fireplace with a drop of the strong stuff and a mince pie too. It's maybe a touch repetitive in places, but I'd say it more than does the job here and fits into the tone quite perfectly. Christopher's Christmas Mission was, I believe, originally a Swedish animation directed by Per Arlin, an experienced director and animator who's been active since the 1970s right up to the modern day, with his last production being in 2013. He has plenty of credits, admittedly mostly things I've never personally heard of, but I'm led to believe that some of his credits are quite popular in that part of Europe. This film is one of his early works, which left me rather impressed as it looks like something much more impressive than someone's second or third production. It looks great. Tage Danielsson was this movie's writer, and again, he's a fairly comprehensive bibliography in terms of written works and animation. He had been active since the 60s and remained active right up until his unfortunate death in 1985 at the age of 57. This is a really sweet script with some great ideas and a really open mind towards looking after those less fortunate. It's got a really wholesome message, and I'm led to believe that it still plays on Swedish television every year to quite a successful reception, which I think is lovely, and it's nice to see that this kind of material is so well received and understood. Christopher's Christmas Mission was originally broadcast in 1975, and as I've just said, in Sweden at least, it's been broadcast pretty much every Christmas since then. Here in the UK, I'm led to believe that it must have been broadcast at some point, otherwise what would have been the point in having it localised, but from checking the Genome Project, all I can ascertain is that it wasn't broadcast on the BBC. So maybe this was shown on ITV? It kinda has Channel 4 written all over it too. I don't know, honestly. What I can say is that it was released on VHS in 1997 and DVD in 2006 by Abbey Home Video. And both of those are out of print at this time. But it's dirt cheap on Amazon for either of them, and there are plenty for sale. So if you want to check this one out, there are options there for you. The print quality on the DVD is pretty nice. There's no extra features apart from a scene select. It's probably the best this film is going to look in its dubbed format. I am aware also that the UK version is slightly edited from the Scandinavian version. There's apparently a blink and you'll miss it shot of some cartoon boobs that have been chopped out of the UK version, but it is retained on the Swedish cut. I'm also aware that there is a HD broadcast copy doing the rounds that's dubbed into its native Swedish language, and that version does look good. But without re-editing the soundtracks, which I don't personally see much point in doing, the DVD is the best you're going to get. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Christopher's Christmas Mission. On the one hand, I feel like I got off on the wrong foot with it. Thinking I was going into a kids' film and being wrong-footed left a bad taste in my mouth, and try as I might, I just couldn't get on with the animation style, which continues to just freak me out a bit. However, I absolutely love the soundtrack. Bernard Cribbins is always great in almost anything he's involved in, and the plot is heartwarming and festive without being in your face about it. While the script may be a bit shaky on the translation front, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a Jesus angle that comes literally out of nowhere in this dub that left me scratching my head wondering where it came from, overall, I liked this one. I'd happily give it another go sometime, and I think I may warm to it even further after multiple watches. It seems to me to be that kind of a film. So this Christmas, why not settle down with something a little bit different and give this a go? It may make you think differently about the season.